Alright guys, I hope you're ready to ungear your hunt units and free up those rage set, because I think the best new way to get gear is officially here. Now that we've worked out some of the kinks with the mode and we figured out some ways to optimize it, it's starting to look like Rift mode is becoming better than hunt in terms of value and what you can get. You know, like we said. Hey guys, hope you guys are doing well. Valky here. It's been a few days since we got Rift, and I hope everybody had a chance to get the earlier few runs in. Those are always going to be the toughest runs, and if you still need help on that end, I got a guide for you right here, link in the description to get you through all the basics for this event. Also, as an aside, if you prefer reading, I'll have the written guide in my Discord covering all phases of the event for each phase that we'll be hitting. But if you're past that early phase where you'll need to get those stable finishes, and you want to get those consistent finishes, and most likely when you're working on those 3-run clears and maybe even a 2-run clear, this is the video for you. Once again, this is an endgame PvE content, so if you're not sure this mode is for you, you can just as easily get your gear from Wyvern or Banshee 13. But if you want to optimize your farming, this is probably your best bet. But that being said, for anybody in the endgame, meaning, yeah, you know, I like a speed set, but maybe crit and hit set don't really do it for me. Or if, you know, my life steal set and counter set are great, but my destruction set still needs a lot of work. If that sounds like you and you're tired of seeing 5 different teams needed for hunt, and especially when hunt buff kicks, you'll need like 4 more units geared, I would say this is the mode for you. You gear 6 units, maybe even just 4, and then farm all the gear you'll ever need. I think to that end, if you're a new player trying to catch up to older players, this event is actually a huge opportunity to focus fire on the weaknesses of your account and cover that specifically. You know, as we've gone over in the last video, hitting Rift Control level 1 to get the attack down fragment right here is huge for survival. It's so clutch in the beginning of this journey. The last video covered up to getting RC8, where we'll have this rune preventing our Soul Weavers from being defense penetrated, allowing us to switch over to this right side rune, giving our entire team more damage. And now we should be on the journey to getting RC15, Rift Control level 15, where we'll get this. After the hero in the back row attacks with a basic skill, has a 50% chance to activate a basic attack as an extra attack. Can only be activated once per turn though, so do need to be cycling them quite a bit. Since we already have an established team, let's talk about the steps we can take to optimize performance for our maximum gains. While that is going on, I'll have my run going on in the back to show you guys the current level of damage I'm doing. And I would say, you know, probably starting around RC11, this team becomes so stable that even with 0 defense breaks all run, you should still be consistently clearing these runs in 2 runs. Only caveat being, you do need to have a rage set if you want to get the most out of your stamina for this mode. Now, first up is our Frontline unit. Here we have mascot Hazel. I'll be showing stats on screen, but once again, if you need to see my earlier stats, I will have it up in the Discord. Now, she almost has a full rune board. Important stats here is the bulk plus 220 ER. You'll need this to resist the cooldown delay, since that's about 95% of the reason why Hazel is here. Once you have the Soul Weaver fragment unlocked at RC8, she can survive without Candlestick. And at this point, it becomes significantly better to run Idol's Cheer, giving your DPSs more turns. Shoutouts to my main man Tristan Wolf for figuring this out. Collaborating with the community was more than half the fun for me for this project, so definitely really appreciate everybody coming together for this. It's probably the best unit from RC0 all the way up to 15, and she's a 3-star, so no reason why you don't use her as your front unit. Maybe if you don't get 220 ER, that's probably the only one I can think of. Now, if you don't have Hazel, I haven't tried Tamarin with this setup. I imagine she'll still function as usual, but the only caveat is you do have to keep that Candlestick since dual attacks are disabled in this mode, so S2 for her will need to make up for that value whenever you proc that Candlestick. Another popular frontline unit I've been seeing is Roy Mustang with Chatty. Since he doesn't rely on cooldowns and has a passive that caps damage dealt against him, he can actually survive perfectly fine with any Soul Weaver topping him off from the back and clearing the burns. His ultimate is purely fighting spirit based, so the cooldown pushback doesn't really hurt him, plus it reapplies his damage buffs. So if you have a really cracked lifesteal one for PvP and your Hazel doesn't have 220 ER, or if you don't have full runes, I think he's a great candidate for that frontline spot. I think Ravi works as well as another option. She doesn't rely on cooldowns, has a few debuffs to her kit. Her stats also get ramped up quite a bit for PvE content, so she might actually be good at cheating out stats, but I think her weakness comes from her lack of buffs that she plays with, so she's kind of a selfish unit, but if you don't have any of these other units, I think she'll do, but I can't speak to how good she'll be, especially when you're looking for a setup like mine you see on screen. I would say like something like this would be a perfect run in the making. Last unit I'll mention here is Charlotte. Don't expect here to be a first ballot pick until RC21, where this middle device will double her damage output. But if you don't have any other options at your immediate disposal, I suspect she'll work on probably any PvP builds. And if you have a holy sacrifice on her, that just means she'll survive just that much longer. Debuffer. Next up is the Debuffer slot. The best in slot here has always been and seems to always will be Fire Haste. The debuffer job is to flood the boss bar with debuffs, since the main mechanic is that when you filled this bar up with 10 buffs or debuffs, it caps out, so the boss can't have any more damage penetration. And I would say even more importantly, the number one thing these guys need to do is land defense break. And Haste is still the hardest unit to replace in this mode by far, which explains why his banner is currently up in Covenants right now alongside Tamarin. Artifact I'm using right now is actually Warhorn, courtesy of my buddy Ice, who literally just came back to play the game. Although it just seems like specifically he did it to remind me that I'm stupid and Haste's job is just here to boost damage. So forgot about that. Thank you, Ice, for reminding me. Haste stats actually has a pretty wide spread depending on what you need. If your runs are stable, then I would drop his speed for more damage, 100%. Anything to push closer to the range of being able to two-shot the runs, and eventually one-shot the run, I think it's a big plus for me. If your run's still not stable, meaning sometimes your team can wipe before the full 40 turns, then I would run him on a faster build to cycle out those turns. Even adding in RNL can help, since he can heal a bit as well, and getting extra turns in just to make sure your rift level goes up as fast as possible. The 115 effectiveness is a must-have, so for me, he's glued to that effectiveness ring, and a crit chance neck should give you all the damage you need by just giving you a lot of damage boosts. And all you need to do is fish for damage and finishing out his effectiveness from his substats. I think Elfeld is probably your other really good option as a main defense breaker. Compared to Haste, she's not as good as flooding the boss with a litany of debuffs, and if you miss defense break, you're on the books to do pretty much nothing until your next S3. But the part that makes her real good is that she has attack buff built in, and she has Song of Stars access for target debuff, which further pushes your damage. With Xeon stripping buffs as much as he does, another set of attack buff piled on top gives us more uptime for more damage. Stat-wise, she'll pretty much look like Fire Haste, crit chance neck, effectiveness ring, and you want to make sure she's the fastest unit on your team, as speed tuning your defense break to go before your main damage dealer is honestly just elementary at this point, and I would recommend everybody do that. And you'll notice that Haste is always my first unit in this, followed by my attack buffer, Hazel, going right here, followed by the next DPS, all just to go ahead of Milim, who I'll explain why she needs to be the slowest unit on the team. Now, for your debuffers, I think the last unit that's probably an acceptable replacement is maybe a high effectiveness Surin. Because at least with Alabastron, there's a chance for defense breaks, and she's very proficient, as you can see here, flooding the boss with a whole bunch of debuffs. Now, I would say if you do this, you do need an additional defense breaker, and we'll go over all of them right here. Sub-Debuff / Sub-DPS. This spot is reserved for units that can help your main debuffer fill up the boss bar ASAP. And in the likely event of a defense break whiff, they have a small chance to make up for it, or at the very least, just drop a whole bunch of debuff so your main DPS can activate their rage set very easily. The best unit for this spot so far for me is still Fire Surin. The synergy with Fire Haste is just too good. Compared to my first team, she replaces Fire Mercedes. Shoutouts to Tristan Wolf again for suggesting her, as the natural synergy just works so well. She can sometimes instantly fill up the boss's buff bar following haste, so when that defense break lands, you'll be doing a lot. And you clog up all of the defense pen that Xeon could potentially have, and just make the run super safe starting turn 1, which gives us room to push for more damage on the rest of our builds. Now, if you don't have haste, and you're using Surin as your main debuffer, you'll need another defense break unit if you're okay counting on them here. One unit I've seen people really like is Fire Ken, who can bypass absolute resistance with his improved vigor uptime for stability. Fire Tenebria, I think after her buff, is also a viable candidate with defense break on a 3-turn cooldown, so pretty good option. I thought about using Eligos, but since dual attacks are locked out from all characters and Eligos gets a lot of his values from those dual attacks, I don't think he's one of the better picks for this event, so he's probably sitting out of Rift. Another pick I've seen go around is for a sub-debuff DPS is actually Jacko on Cradle of Life with slightly higher effectiveness. If you do this, you turn off cooldown so S1 can just always be a double attack. I think it's still a little bit risky since you'll be taking a lot of extra damage from the ultimate, but if you output and push enough damage, honestly, who cares if we drop a unit maybe slightly early, as long as the damage is worth it. I would just say if you need to rely on their debuffs, just make sure the unit is approximately 150 in effectiveness to go through the ER to land those defense breaks. If you're not running Hazel as your frontline unit, the sub-DPS slot will be where you run a faster variant of Hazel to constantly cycle the attack up, or maybe a different unit to CR push if necessary. Main DPS. Now this is the crowning jewel of the builds, and why I say this is where hunt units become ungeared, because you're going to want your best rage set on them. For me, these units are the ones that replace bomb model Kana in the original clear team if you came from that video, and the first ballot unit for that is Milim. If you've been looking at the footage for this video, you've seen the damage she deals is pretty surreal. Even on no defense breaks, she's just able to clear in 2 runs, which I think is crazy. And the reason why she's so good at that is the power of Rage Set plus Caladra. She's here, 1, her damage output's substantial, great damage base stats, and has a little bit bulk to it too. Number 2, she has great sustain from her S1, and I have the EE as well, letting her heal just so much more, especially on defense breaks. You know, she's hitting for like 50, 60k. It's a full heal every time for herself. And number 3, once again, can't understate it, Rage Set plus Caladra. Probably the best way to push damage before you hit that RC15 threshold. Jacko, I think, is another common replacement for this, and especially after RC15, I think her damage goes through the roof with the extra attack EE. If she's the main DPS for your comp, then you're going to want to run a Rage Set plus Golden Rose to maximize damage and sustain. Due to her damage output, I suspect she'll be the main way a lot of people finish 1-run clears, especially before Kane drops. But she is a limited unit, and I suspect she might be a bit exclusive for new players. So I'll be, and plus, you know, I'm running mine on PvP for my RTA streams, so I'm probably leaving this up for my friends to test, and I'll just be going with a high damage Milim. Fire Ken is also pretty decent in this slot after hitting his variety of PvE buffs, and now we let him pretty comfortably maintain his vigor buff, which adds a lot not only to his damage output, but lets some of his debuffs bypass effect resist. Mercedes, I think, can also be used in this slot. Main strength with her is Magic for Friends, and her S2 can quickly stack up the missiles from the boss, really extending the duration of the debuffs, so you know you're getting defense break for the entire run. Very safely extending the duration, and on top of that, her damage is just good. With the revive built in, you can always build her full squish just for more damage. I think to a less degree here, Kana is still viable, but less good. She doesn't have a lot of ways to push damage. I mean, she only has an attack buff built in, but the thing with her is that she has access to Bloodstone, which allows her to top off any low HP units. And, you know, sometimes even though our run is super secure, it does get a little bit close. Some of our units get, you know, after the burn ticks, drop really close to death. And if you want to avoid that, Bomb Model Kana or any ranger like Fire Shuri with Bloodstone will be able to do for you. So the main idea with the slot is to just slap on your best rage set, and if they are a mage, also Kaladra, and you just want them to do damage, and they get pushed up by your mascot Hazel's Idol's Cheer, and it's pretty big. You do see a lot of gains and a lot of damage, and look at that. That got us to RC15, and that's honestly all we needed. And you guys will probably see me in another day or two with a new guide detailing how to do the entire thing in maybe one phase, because, you know, without defense break, I can already do it in 2 phases comfortably, as you guys seen here. So now that, you know, we've gotten to RC15, right? While I figure out what to do, let me give you guys some quick tips and tricks that really helped me figure out for myself how, you know, the heads and tail of Rift, and, you know, what is necessary essentially to get to a point where this is becoming more stamina worthy than hunts. Number 1, as you get deeper in the mode, you're going to want better pet skills for this. I already went over what pet skills you want in the last video, but here's the thing. I used 400 pet tickets, and I've only managed to get an AAA pet. Now, I think those skills are the best pet skills if you're newer, or if you're really, really new, you could take reforged material over seasonal points if you know you're in this for the long haul. But I think the main thing is Tristan Wolf has a guide on how to fish for pet skills and essentially triple the chances you can get for getting the exact skills you need. So I'll be linking to that. But boy, this is going to last for a long time, and, you know, even if it's a couple percentage points up, I think being efficient goes a long way and will save you a lot of stamina over the course of months. Collaborate and experiment, as this is a long-form event with a lot of nuances, compositions, and combos that might not be immediately obvious with so many different fragments, team compositions, units, and limitations, and specifically with this boss's, you know, restrictive mechanics. This event wouldn't have been solved so fast if not for the community working with each other. E7 has always been a community game, so make sure you're in a guild you can talk to, have friends in a server that you can give you first-hand experience, and if you don't have that, feel free to at least hit up my Discord, as I have plenty of active players here in the end game that are chatting there daily, either about RTA or, in this case, a lot of people have been talking about Rift mode. So, and I have a guide there, so make sure you're using all of your community resources. Lastly, use your Grace of Growth. One last shout out for Tristan for explaining this to me, since this is going to be a seasonal event and will last, 4 to 6 months, with units like Kane specifically being released for Rift. We can save a lot of molas by putting units like Kane, or if you don't want to use haste, maybe haste on a Grace of Growth. This way you can get around having to build the units specifically for PvE and save yourself some Molagoras. And when Fire Rift goes away and eventually becomes replaced by Ice Rift and Earth Rift, we can just grace the next unit up, saving us 22 to 33 Molagoras per rotation in the process. I think this is paramount for new players trying to catch up, and I think this is one tip you do not want to miss. And I think that's everything I have for you guys for phase 2 of this event, the mid-game. Hope the video was helpful, and if it was, you can always help me back by giving the video a sub, a like. Really helps the channel grow, and I appreciate it. Hope you guys stick around. I'll have RTA content coming up. I guess not the last time. Once again, I just want to thank my main man Tristan Wolf again for collaborating with me on this mode. If it's not already obvious, I'm kind of a fanboy, so having somebody I really look up to bounce ideas with me was a lot of fun for this event. Also, one of the first time I cooked for PvE content, and I think it's just an honor cooking with essentially what I think is like a Michelin star chef, okay? Be linking his guides and this in the description, so if you need any of the resources I referenced earlier, feel free to look in there and subscribe to him. He's a great friend. And once again, I'll be probably updating what I'm doing in the comments down below, and I'll have it pinned. So we can always talk about it, have a discussion. If you guys have questions, I'll be here. Wait, did I just do 91% in a single run? Christ on a stick. I'm almost to a one-shot run. Let's go. Well, you know, once I figure out a one-shot run, I'll let you guys know. But for now, I hope you guys have a great one, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Stay safe out there. See ya.